a future night designated for budget presentations, etc. So I wanted to just go through that. So with that being said, the state budget is pretty much where it was 6 months ago. Last week, the House and Senate put forth a new budget proposal to the governor for his approval, with which he had no input in. It apparently gives additional funding to public education. That's good, but in overall terms, the budget is less than it was before and remains unbalanced, which is one of the governor's primary objectives in adopting a budget for 15-16. So that being said, at this point in time, we're waiting to see whether he will sign it, veto it, or do nothing, which would in fact allow the budget to take effect immediately. If he vetoes it, there's been discussion of a override, a veto override. However, that takes 2/3 of both the House and the Senate, which is a very difficult thing to achieve. At this point in time, we're still short that $5.5 million of revenue that we talked about a month or so ago. There is a glimmer of hope, but at this point in time, I'm not counting on anything until I see the check come into my bank account. So, with that said, I want to talk about some additional budgetary needs. If you look at the document I provided to you, on the bottom section, there's a small section in blue. I mentioned at our last meeting that we thought there was going to be a need to add a special education teacher at the elementary level. We have been monitoring it closely, and we feel very strongly that we're going to have to add an elementary autistic teacher. And I'm providing you with the cost there. We are looking at some options on how we might be able to mitigate the cost of it, but we don't have a determination on whether those are valid directions yet. But regardless of whether we find the cost savings or not, we do feel we need to add this resource to our district. Mr. Parker, you asked a question earlier about why we're 2% over the average without place. I can tell you that over the last 5 years, the district has made a concerted effort to bring kids back into the district who have some more significant issues that historically may have been placed outside the district. But as a result of that, we need to add the resources behind it to support it. So that's what that is. The second item that's listed here is medical and prescription premium increases. We had hoped to have a no increase this year in our medical plan, and we had budgeted for a 10% increase in our prescription plan. Over the last 2 years, we have had reductions in each of the years in the premium rates and what our board contribution levels were. However, we were trying to find the bottom of the bell curve. I think we did. We're pretty close to right on target right now, and the medical trend that's being proposed by our benefits consultants for the medical plan is 7.8%. They are currently projecting an increase of 6.9% for us for the upcoming school year. On the prescription side, where the proposal is for a 15.6% increase. As I indicated, we proposed a 10% increase in our original budget. These are not the final numbers. I have a meeting scheduled on April 6th where I will attempt to negotiate with our consortium and the benefits consultant to try and reduce these numbers. One of the things that we have an issue with is, I know we've had presentations from auditors that our self-employed healthcare fund has a growing reserve, growing fund balance. This would be a primary opportunity for us to use some of that fund balance to mitigate the premium increase. However, right now, our terms with our consortium do not take our reserves into account. So I'm going to try and get that changed. And if so, we're going to try and reduce this number. So I'm putting it down as where it is now, which is $375,000 of an increase in health care. Hopefully it'll be somewhat less than that. And I'll keep you posted as we go through. So as Mr. Rabinowitz said last time, our budget continues to change all the way through the end of the year. In the past couple years, it's all been in a positive direction. That's not always the case, however. So these are some additional costs that we need to take into consideration. Okay, the next issue, we were charged with coming up with a, let's back up a little bit. My initial budget presentation reflected a 2% tax increase. And there are certainly the same number of large question marks out there as to whether or not we're going to be funded adequately as there was then. We had also been charged with coming up with what it would take to get to a 1% tax increase and what it would take to get to a 0% tax increase. I've twisted the terminology a little bit because our new reality is not that. So what I attempted to do is tell you what type of cuts we would need to make to reduce our tax increase by 1% and what additional types of issues we might have to consider to get to a 2% reduction. That may or may not be a net 0% tax increase. And then other mandated items, non-mandated items that are out there for consideration.
Just want to make sure I'm reading this right. So instead of saying 1% tax increase, 2% tax increase on this chart, you're saying reduced by 1%, reduced by 2%. If we're starting at 2% and reduced by 2%, not factoring in the additional cost, then you feel you're achieving your zero.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. But you will notice if you look at the end of at the bottom of to achieve it, there is an additional amount needed there. So I wasn't able to get there without considering some more severe type of reductions that we would need board input in. So to get to a 1% tax reduction, we currently have notification of a potential 3 retirements. So if those 3 individuals do retire and they are replaced, we would save approximately $119,000.
Those 3 in additional to the ones that we already know about?
No, we have 3 that we think, or 2 that we know about, and 1 that we anticipate.
Okay.
In addition, we currently have a groundskeeper position that has been unfilled for the better part of a year. It was in the budget as being replaced. We think we can do that without go without replacing that position possibly. It could have an impact on the condition of our grounds. I do want to point out a error here in the second column. That number should be $60,500, not $68,000. I apologize for that. I made that correction and didn't do it in both columns. Beyond that, we had, when we projected the Western Center budget, we had anticipated a larger increase in their budget than what they actually proposed. So there's a $60,000 reduction there that we can make in that budget. So those three are fairly non-confrontational issues. Once we get beyond that, they get incrementally more painful. So we haven't had an increase in our building allocation for several years. We give our buildings an allocation based on the number of students they have, and that has been, we attempted to increase it a few years ago, and then we cut it back, and then so it's been flat for a number of years on a per pupil basis. If we were to reduce those building allocations by 5%, that would yield a savings of approximately $33,000. And we think district-wide, in our district-wide departments, which would be facilities, curriculum, district office, and technology, if necessary, we could come up with cuts there to yield the numbers presented. But under that scenario, some things that we covet may be lost. It may be in the technology department, it may be some computers, it could be some software, it could be some things like that. In the facilities department, it might be things, equipment not getting replaced in a timely fashion, or deferred maintenance, or things like that, which could eventually cause some challenges. And it would go around, but we would suggest that you give the administrators in charge of those departments the ability to identify the items that they feel would be less impactful in cutting. So that, if you notice, this is like a green, yellow, red type scenario. The yellows get a little bit more challenging, and the reds are, some of them are borderline not possible.
Unacceptable.
Right, well, yes. They may not be borderline.
Yes. Well played, Mr. Moore.
So the first two items under the yellow section are potential reductions in staffing. In a middle school music position possibly being reduced to a half-time position, and the elimination of a .5 business teacher. At the Western Center last year and again this year, we will be receiving money back because they had a surplus beyond their anticipated level. So we had committed the monies that we received last year to defray any future increases. If we were to completely eliminate the increase requested in this year's Western Center budget, we could reduce that line item by an additional $40,000. At the high school, we have a custom marching band drill valued at $10,000, and we could consider deferring a bus or purchasing it through capital reserve. Little hesitant on pushing things to capital reserve at this point in time. Prior to our last meeting, we had a facilities committee meeting where we outlined a 10-year plan that was in the neighborhood of $15 million, where we only have $6 million available to pay for it. So I hesitate to push a lot of things there, or we may not be able to do some of the needed repairs. I don't know if we want to go into each of the items under the laundry list of non-mandated items. I kind of put this together because if we do not get the state funding this year, we're really not talking about 1% or 2%. We're talking about survival, and these might be some of the things that we need to do to survive.
Well, I was thinking that that's probably why you added some of those in, and And obviously, if we have to make up $5 million, then we're talking about an emergency situation.
Correct.
Still, it's great that you listed those out for us. I don't think we need to go through them one by one. We can read. I think that it's only in an emergency situation that the great majority of those would be factored in. I'm going to ask you though to once again let us know the total and complete cost for creation, production, and mailing of the Achiever. This may come as a surprise to you, but I like it even less than I have in the past. So I think that's around $30K if I remember correctly when you add it all up, and I'd like to see that in as a possibility for us to consider. Please.
I will quantify what it's costing us this year. I think our costs are down a bit because we haven't done four issues, but I'll quantify that for our next meeting.
Thank you.
And that could be one of the district-wide reductions if that's where we want to go.
Okay.
I noticed in today's Achiever that there was ads in there. So even with those ads, it's still costing us, whatever the number is.
The majority of the ads are district-wide sponsors that we get through the Market Street Sports Program. So we get that money outside of the Achiever per se, but as part of our agreement with them, we publish an ad for them in the Achiever. So, we have some money, it's in a different bucket, but not directly offsetting the Achiever.
So if we eliminated, just to be clear, that if we eliminated the Achiever, would we lose Market Street funding, or could we make it up somewhere else?
I don't necessarily think we would. I think we'd have to change our contract language with the sponsors.
We could, for example, throw those ads in the program guides for like the plays, for example, or find some other way to accommodate those needs. Couldn't we?
The ads, I believe they have ads in all the sporting programs and things like that. I'm not sure if they get it in the play programs or not, but we typically have an opportunity for a 10-second advertisement at the events, thanking them for their sponsorship. But I'm sure we could come up with something. It might reduce it to be a little bit. We don't know how they are going to view the accessibility to the community.
I just have a quick question concerning, you say defer the purchase of one bus. Are we planning on?
We have a plan to purchase. It's kind of like a rotating inventory of bus here. It might be 2 buses and a couple vans. It might be 3 vans and 2 buses, or 1 bus, or something like that. I heard it was a long time ago. All of our buses got to the age of end of life at the same time, and we whole fleet. So we have about 40 vehicles. We replace about 3 a year.
Like who does the maintenance and stuff? And the buses are decent a long lifetime. And I do understand that school buses, an engine on a school bus is more taxed because of the stop and go. 18-wheeler that's driving from Maine to California. I'm just curious because I know that they can interior. I'm sure it takes a beating.
The CMD services is the private vehicles. We buy the vehicles. We replace them life expectancy. If you look at most of the inventory replacement in 4 years on the outside, just to make sure that they're maintained. I think we have a pretty